Welcome to the True Crime Family channel. Today we bring you a tragic and twisted tale of fame, love, betrayal, and murder. A story where the glamorous lives of two world-renowned athletes take a dark turn, ending in a shocking and horrific crime. What began as a seemingly liberated and modern relationship, grounded in the principles of openness and trust, soon spirals into deceit, obsession, and a gruesome series of murders. This is the story of Jake Reynolds and Sarah Carter, a power couple in the world of sports, whose open marriage would lead to a chain of events no one could have foreseen. Jake Reynolds was a towering figure in the world of athletics. A decorated Olympian, Jake had earned multiple gold medals in track and field, his powerful physique and unyielding determination making him a household name. Sarah Carter, his equally famous wife, was a volleyball superstar, known for her agility, strategic prowess, and fierce competitive spirit. Together, they were the ultimate power couple, adored by fans and revered by their peers. But behind the glittering facade of their public lives lay a relationship fraught with complexities. Both Jake and Sarah were fiercely independent and ambitious, qualities that had drawn them together but also created tension. Early in their marriage, they decided to embrace an open relationship, a choice that reflected their desire for freedom and nonconformity. They believed this arrangement would strengthen their bond, allowing them to explore other relationships without compromising their love for each other. But as time would tell, this decision would lead them down a dark and dangerous path. In the beginning, their open marriage seemed to work. Jake and Sarah set clear boundaries, agreed on transparency, and promised to never let their extramarital affairs interfere with their primary relationship. They were confident that their love and respect for one another would protect them from the pitfalls that often plagued such arrangements. For a while, it appeared they were right. Jake had a few discreet encounters, but his focus remained on his career and his marriage. Sarah, on the other hand, embraced the freedom more fully. She began exploring relationships with other men, enjoying the thrill of new experiences and the attention she received. Jake, though occasionally uneasy, trusted Sarah and believed their bond was strong enough to withstand these dalliances. However, as Sarah's affairs became more frequent, Jake began to notice changes in her behavior. She became more secretive, often leaving for days at a time, with little explanation. When he questioned her, Sarah would reassure him with a smile, telling him not to worry, that she was simply enjoying the freedom they had agreed upon. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. What Jake didn't know was that Sarah's seemingly innocent life was a carefully constructed facade, hiding a dark and twisted reality that would have shattered his perception of her, had he ever known the truth. Beneath her polished exterior and charming demeanor, Sarah was living a double life, one that was far more sinister and dangerous than anyone could have ever imagined. Her relationships with other women, in particular, harbored a disturbing undercurrent, leading to a series of tragic and horrifying events that no one saw coming. Sarah had always been known for her intense competitiveness, a trait that fueled her meteoric rise in both her career and personal life. But what many didn't realize was that this drive wasn't limited to professional success. It bled into every aspect of her existence, turning her personal relationships into a twisted battleground where only she could emerge victorious. Sarah's need to dominate, to control, extended beyond her public persona and seeped into the very core of her interactions with others, especially the women she became involved with. Her relationships, which began as passionate and whirlwind romances, soon took a dark and possessive turn. Sarah's obsession with maintaining control meant that she couldn't tolerate even the slightest hint of independence or the possibility of abandonment. The thought of these women leaving her, finding happiness or solace in someone else's arms, was something she simply couldn't endure. And so, in her distorted mind, Sarah believed she had only one option: to ensure they never left her alive. The first murder was a shocking display of Sarah's capacity for violence, a brutal act that shattered any illusion of normalcy in her life. It all began with Lena Thompson, a vibrant and talented young volleyball player who was on the cusp of stardom. Lena was everything Sarah admired: driven, ambitious, and full of potential. Their relationship was intense from the start, with Sarah assuming the role of both mentor and lover, guiding Lena in her career, while deepening their personal bond. But as Lena's career began to take off, she started to distance herself from Sarah, focusing more on her future in the sport and less on their increasingly suffocating relationship. Sarah, unable to cope with the growing distance, became increasingly paranoid and possessive. Her jealousy festered, turning what was once admiration into a toxic mix of resentment and fear. She couldn't stand the idea of Lena succeeding without her, of Lena finding happiness elsewhere. The thought consumed her, driving her to the brink of madness. One night, after a particularly heated argument, in which Lena expressed her desire to end the relationship, Sarah snapped. The rage that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted in a violent outburst. Seizing a meat tenderizer, the very tool she used to prepare countless family meals, now turned into an instrument of fury, Sarah attacked. The blows were savage, fueled by a twisted combination of love, hate, and desperation. Each strike was delivered with a terrifying precision, as if Sarah believed that by destroying Lena, she could somehow regain control over the situation. By the time the frenzy subsided, Lena lay motionless, her once bright future extinguished in a cruel twist of fate. In the aftermath, Sarah was consumed by a cold, calculated panic. She knew she had crossed a line from which there was no return, but her survival instincts kicked in almost immediately. Drawing upon the extensive knowledge she had amassed from years of obsessively watching true crime documentaries, Sarah meticulously cleaned the crime scene, ensuring that no trace of the violent act remained. She was methodical, scrubbing every surface, disposing of every piece of evidence that could link her to the crime. Then, in a final act of cold-blooded efficiency, she disposed of Lena's body, making it appear as though Lena had simply left town, disappearing without a trace. Sarah's attention to detail paid off. The disappearance of Lena Thompson became just another unsolved mystery, a case that quickly went cold due to the lack of evidence and leads. To the outside world, Sarah continued on with her life as though nothing had happened. She smiled, she worked, she socialized, all the while knowing that she had gotten away with murder. The disappearance was written off as a tragic but ordinary occurrence, and Sarah's secret remained buried, hidden behind the veneer of normalcy she presented to the world. But beneath the surface, Sarah knew that the darkness within her was only growing, fed by the knowledge of what she had done. The memory of Lena's lifeless body haunted her, a grim reminder of the lengths she was willing to go to maintain control. And though she had successfully concealed the truth from everyone around her, Sarah was keenly aware that the monster she had become was far from satisfied. This was only the beginning of a much darker chapter in her life, one that would continue to unfold in ways more horrific than she could have ever anticipated. Over the next several years, Sarah's pattern of behavior became more deeply entrenched, each incident building upon the last in a sinister spiral of manipulation and murder. She engaged in numerous affairs, each meticulously orchestrated and following a disturbingly consistent trajectory, an intoxicating and passionate beginning, escalating possessiveness, and ultimately a cold-blooded act of violence. Sarah was not just driven by desire. She was consumed by a need for control, a dark compulsion that left her partners unaware of the danger they were in until it was far too late. Sarah's methods were chillingly effective. She was careful, almost clinical, in how she planned each encounter, making sure to cover her tracks with a precision that baffled investigators and left no trace of her involvement. The women she targeted were often vulnerable in some way, emotionally, professionally, or personally, making them easy prey for Sarah's calculated charm. She knew exactly how to reel them in, exploiting their weaknesses while masking her true intentions behind a facade of affection and understanding. Her ability to make each death appear accidental, or to ensure that the women simply vanished without a trace, was a testament to her cold-blooded nature and her deep-seated need to maintain control over her life and the lives of those around her. One of the most chilling and tragic cases was that of Emma Daniels, a talented journalist who had been assigned to cover Sarah's volleyball career. Their relationship began innocuously enough, with Emma seeking to delve into the complexities of Sarah's rise to fame and her enigmatic personality. However, as they spent more time together, Emma found herself irresistibly drawn into Sarah's world, seduced by her charm and apparent vulnerability. What started as a professional relationship quickly blossomed into a whirlwind romance, one that took Emma by surprise, but also excited her in ways she had not anticipated. However, it wasn't long before the darker aspects of Sarah's personality began to surface. Sarah's possessiveness, which Emma initially mistook for intense passion, soon became suffocating. Sarah's need to dominate every aspect of the relationship was overwhelming. And when Emma started to sense that something was deeply wrong, she decided to end the relationship. But Sarah, who had never been able to tolerate rejection or loss of control, devised a plan to ensure that Emma would never leave her. Sarah lured Emma to a remote location, a place where they had shared some of their most intimate moments under the pretense of a final, bittersweet goodbye. The location was isolated, picturesque, and perfect for what Sarah had in mind. Once there, Sarah manipulated the situation to her advantage, playing on Emma's emotions until the moment was right. Then, with a cold, calculated precision, Sarah pushed Emma to her death, making it appear as though she had slipped and fallen from the cliff. Emma's body was discovered days later, broken and lifeless at the bottom of the ravine. The authorities, seeing no signs of foul play, quickly ruled her death as a tragic accident. Sarah, with her unflinching composure, managed to convince everyone, including Emma's grieving family, that she was just as heartbroken by the loss. This murder, like the others before it, only served to inflate Sarah's sense of invincibility. With each successful deception, she became more convinced that she was untouchable, that no one would ever see through the carefully constructed facade she presented to the world. The disappearances and deaths of the women she had been involved with were just unfortunate coincidences, she told herself. Part of the risk of living such a passionate, unpredictable life. She reveled in the thrill of evading detection, her confidence growing with each new conquest. Jake, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of the true nature of the woman he loved. Despite the growing unease he felt in the pit of his stomach, a vague, unsettling feeling that something was off, he never suspected the depth of Sarah's deceit. His trust in her was unwavering, blinded by the love and admiration he had for the woman he believed Sarah to be. He chalked up his concerns to the stress of his own life, never imagining that the real danger lay within the person he shared his life with. Sarah's manipulation was so complete, her control so absolute, that Jake could not see the darkness that had taken root within their relationship, a darkness that would eventually consume everything in its path. While Sarah's affairs with women were marked by possessiveness and violence, her relationships with men were different. She viewed them as purely physical, with no emotional attachment. However, her affair with Brandon Mills, a fellow athlete, marked a turning point in her descent into madness. Brandon was a well-known football player, charismatic and charming. He was also married, which made the affair with Sarah even more dangerous. Unlike her previous affairs, this one began to affect Sarah more deeply. She found herself drawn to Brandon in a way she hadn't experienced before, and the thought of him returning to his wife filled her with a rage she couldn't control. As their relationship progressed, Sarah's jealousy grew. She wanted Brandon all to herself, and the thought of him being with another woman drove her to the brink of insanity. But unlike the women she had killed, Brandon was not someone she could easily eliminate. He was too high profile, and any harm that came to him would undoubtedly draw attention. Desperate to keep Brandon in her life, Sarah began to manipulate him, planting seeds of doubt about his wife and encouraging him to leave her. But Brandon, though intrigued by Sarah, was not willing to destroy his marriage. This rejection pushed Sarah over the edge. She realized that, as long as Jake was in the picture, she could never fully have the life she wanted with Brandon or anyone else. In a twisted and desperate move, Sarah decided that Jake had to die. She rationalized that with Jake out of the way, she could finally be free to pursue her desires without the burden of a husband. The very man who had supported her, loved her, and trusted her now stood in the way of her twisted ambitions. The plan to kill Jake was coldly calculated. Sarah knew Jake's routines, his habits, and his weaknesses. She waited for the right moment, planning every detail meticulously. On the night of the murder, she prepared a romantic dinner, playing the role of the loving wife one last time. After dinner, she suggested they play a friendly game of volleyball in their backyard, a nod to their shared love of sports. Jake, unsuspecting and still in love with his wife, agreed. As they played, Sarah waited for the perfect moment. When Jake was distracted, she struck him with a heavy, iron fire poker, hard. The force was enough to knock him down, but Sarah didn't stop there. She continued to attack, using the poker to bludgeon him until he lay lifeless on the ground. In the aftermath, Sarah staged the scene to look like a tragic accident. She made it appear as though Jake had slipped and fallen during their game, his head hitting the sharp corner of the hearth. To the outside world, it would look like a freak accident, a tragic end to a celebrated athlete's life. However, Sarah's meticulously planned murder was unraveled by a single small detail, a detail she had overlooked in her confidence and arrogance. The police were called to the scene, and while it initially appeared to be an accident, one detective, Detective Laura Martinez, noticed something strange. The fire poker, covered in blood, was placed too neatly near Jake's body, and the pattern of the blood splatter didn't match the supposed accident. Suspicious, Detective Martinez ordered a more thorough investigation. Forensic analysis revealed that the force of the blows inflicted on Jake could not have been caused by a simple fall. The pattern of injuries suggested a deliberate attack. As they dug deeper, inconsistencies in Sarah's story began to emerge. Her calm demeanor during questioning, her detailed knowledge of crime scene procedures, and her reluctance to talk about her relationship with Jake all raised red flags. The investigation took a significant turn when one of Sarah's former lovers, a woman named Tina Rogers, came forward. Tina had managed to escape Sarah's possessive grasp and had been living in fear ever since. When she heard about Jake's death, she contacted the police, revealing Sarah's dark past and her involvement in the disappearances of several women. Armed with this new information, the police re-examined several cold cases, connecting the dots between the missing women and Sarah. It became clear that Sarah was not only responsible for Jake's death, but also for the murders of multiple women over the years. The evidence was damning, and Sarah was arrested. The trial was a media sensation, drawing attention from around the world. Sarah, once a celebrated athlete, was now portrayed as a cold-blooded killer. The prosecution presented a strong case, detailing the pattern of Sarah's crimes and the brutal murder of her husband. The defense tried to argue that Sarah was mentally ill, driven by a combination of emotional trauma and the pressures of her career. But the jury was not swayed. The most shocking moment of the trial came when Sarah's affair with Brandon Mills was revealed. The prosecution argued that her obsession with Brandon and her desire to be free of Jake had driven her to murder. Brandon, who testified during the trial, expressed his shock and horror at the extent of Sarah's crimes, distancing himself from her entirely. In the end, Sarah was found guilty of multiple counts of murder, including the first-degree murder of Jake Reynolds. The judge sentenced her to death, a punishment reserved for the most heinous of crimes. Sarah showed little emotion as the verdict was read, her once vibrant and charismatic persona now reduced to a hollow shell. Even after her conviction, Sarah remained defiant. In a final act of desperation, she attempted to escape from prison, hoping to flee to Antarctica, a place where she believed she could disappear and start a new life. However, her plan was quickly foiled, and she was caught before she could even leave the country. Sarah's failed escape only solidified the public's view of her as a remorseless and calculating killer. She was placed under tighter security, and her appeals were quickly denied. The story of her crimes and her fall from grace became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how even the most seemingly perfect lives can hide dark and dangerous secrets. The tragic story of Jake Reynolds and Sarah Carter is one of love turned to obsession, freedom twisted into control, and a life of privilege ending in death and disgrace. Their open marriage, once seen as a modern and progressive choice, became the catalyst for a series of horrific events that no one could have predicted. Sarah's actions were driven by a combination of jealousy, possessiveness, and a need for control, traits that, when left unchecked, led to the destruction of multiple lives. Her story serves as a grim reminder that even those who appear to have it all can be hiding the darkest of secrets, and that the pursuit of freedom, when taken to the extreme, can lead to devastating consequences. Sarah now awaits her fate on death row, her life of fame and success replaced by isolation and infamy. The legacy she leaves behind is not one of athletic prowess or personal freedom, but of the lives she destroyed in her twisted quest for control. The world will remember her not as the volleyball star she once was, but as a murderer who could not escape the consequences of her actions. How could Jake have stopped things from going so wrong? Was Sarah's choice to embrace the freedom of their open relationship fully a cause for their downfall, or just a symptom of deeper issues between them? Thank you for joining us in unraveling this tragic story. Click here for another dramatic tale of love and betrayal.